Over the past several years, we've watched the efforts for funding public education in Utah continuously erode.
We had a long trend where we were content to just grow education a little bit, but put most of our priorities for extra money into other things in the budget.
Utah at one point had a pretty good-looking tax structure. It's been diminishing over time.
I see the impact that budget cuts have in my classroom every day because I'm here every day.
It's questionable whether we really value education in this state because we're not putting our money into it at the same rate that the economy is growing.
We understand that this Great Recession is creating a different kind of economy, an economy that profoundly relies on intellectual capital and educational achievement.
Here in Utah, we know from studies and research that an investment in education is an investment in our economy. Over the past several years, we've watched the efforts for funding public education in Utah continuously erode. That has resulted in extremely large class sizes and a very difficult position for us in terms of attracting and retaining teachers. We know we have the largest class sizes and the lowest per pupil spending in the country, which makes our jobs as educators extremely difficult.
We used to have a phenomenon in this state called the education paradox, and it was that even though we had the lowest per pupil funding in the state, we could say we were trying as hard as we possibly could because we were facing a very high tax burden and a lot of that money going into education. So we were in the top 10 in the nation for our effort for funding education. And now we're down in the 30s. We're 34th in the nation in our funding effort. And we still have the lowest per pupil spending, and the difference has been getting wider and wider between us and the national average, or even between us and the next lowest state.
The other ways that budget cuts have impacted me specifically are less planning time. And by that I mean we are asked to do more with less.
Over the last 2 years in particular, we have lost quality teaching days, which translates to professional development opportunities that are lost for teachers to impact and improve their instruction in their classrooms. Also, administrators have been cut. Nurses are now having to take care of 20 to 30 schools within a district. We have major issues in terms of the furlough days, which are happening in our state.
We have the lowest per pupil funding, we know that. And yet our test scores are around the national average. In some cases, they're above the national average. And shouldn't we consider that success? But in reality, we shouldn't be comparing against the national average. We should be comparing against the states that are like Utah. And when we line up the states that are like Utah in terms of our ethnicity, our poverty levels, and the amount of education that parents have, we're last in that bunch in every comparison that we make. We are not keeping up with the states that are like Utah. And they're not just a little bit above us, they are far and away, head and shoulders above Utah in educational performance.
We have, coming through the pipeline in K-12, a lot more diversity. And in addition to that, then, with all of this linguistic and ethnic and cultural diversity in our classrooms, our one-size-fits-all sort of approach to curriculum clearly doesn't work anymore.
We made some permanent decisions in the mid-90s to reduce property taxes, even though we were already a low property tax state. And we have continued to reduce those taxes in most years since then. And so that is a huge chunk of our education funding, and the base is getting smaller and smaller. We've done the same thing with income tax. We've cut income tax a number of times, but we've also relaxed the earmarking for income tax in this state so that the money can be spent on all kinds of other things. And that has reduced the amount of funding for education.
When Utah went with a flat tax a couple of years ago, the drawback of that is it doesn't grow as fast as a progressive income tax, such as ones you had before did, and that means that in future years it won't produce as much revenue to fund public services. The very worrisome part about that is that the income tax is the only tax that even has the potential to grow as fast as the economy.
TEF stands for Taxes, Economic Development, and Funding. And it really is a three-pronged approach. First, you've got to examine the taxes that are funding your schools. Are they broad-based? Are they low rates? Do they match other states? Are they producing enough revenue for your schools? Economic development is the second piece, and in many instances, states have given away huge subsidies and tax breaks to attract industry, and it's not exactly attracting the industry that they hoped it would. It may be just a subsidy without any return. And then long-term funding for education. Where do we want to take our education system? What kind of investment do we want to make long-term in our education future? Those three issues can control how successful an education system is in a state.
TAF concept that we've been working with is a recognition of a very simple idea that quality education depends on having a strong, growing economy. A strong, growing economy, on the other hand, depends on having a high-quality education system. And the link between these two is the funding of the educational structure.
We can see now through studies that $1 invested in public education multiplies, and it multiplies at a faster rate than $1 of cutting taxes. That's a new paradigm for people, especially in the business community. So I'm excited that that research is out there and that we can begin to have the conversation about investing in public education as an economic development tool.
But I don't think the answer is a formula. I don't think the answer to solve this is to say, earmark the income tax again. We need to do something differently. There needs to be a relationship developed that is more trusting between legislators, policymakers, and education officials. I don't know how we do that, but that's going to be crucial.
In order to properly fund education, education has to become a partner. They have to get involved in the conversation between business and its government about how education is funded.
This is a vital time for education leaders to go forth to their policymakers, their legislators, and their governor to make the case for education as an economic development tool in the very short term. They can argue very effectively, and should argue very effectively, that expenditures for education maintains the most vital asset of their community, their public school system. I'm very optimistic about Utah's future because it has a young, dynamic economy, a very vibrant population base. If it makes the right policy decisions, this can be and continue to be one of the best places in the country to live.
Schools are being held accountable for achieving results, and teachers are doing remarkable things in classrooms every day to meet those high expectations. But in many cases, we lack the capacity to deliver those results because of inadequate public school funding, which has been brought on by an inefficient and eroding tax structure. We must make changes to Utah's tax structure that will allow us to adequately fund schools so we can deliver the educational results our children need in a 21st century economy. And we simply cannot make those changes without public support. That's why we started the Speak for Tomorrow Today campaign. You've probably seen the lawn signs. Utah's future depends on preparing students with the skills they need to survive in the 21st century. But teachers can't do it alone. To really make a difference, we need the help of everyone who is concerned about our children, our economy, our future. We must work together to make quality public schools a priority now.